freedom.
War, as the saying goes, is politics waged by other means. In Israel, war, usually waged on Gaza, can be a means of distraction, a political weapon. And that context is often missing in the news coverage. Last week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu launched airstrikes on the Gaza Strip, what his government called a targeted killing of an Islamic Jihad commander. 8 members of one Gazan family were among the scores of innocent Palestinians killed. However, in political terms, those missiles weren't even aimed at Islamic Jihad. The real target was Benny Gantz, Netanyahu's political rival. Gantz has tried to piece together a coalition government to replace Netanyahu's, one that would have included the support of Israeli Arab parties. Netanyahu is fighting for more than his job. He's just become the first sitting Israeli prime minister charged with a crime, indicted for bribery, fraud, and breach of trust. So Netanyahu could use the distraction, and he knows that conflict with Palestinians, military and political, can pay off. He can also count on those in the news media who tend to shorthand the political context and go long on the dominant narrative that Palestinians somehow pose an existential threat to Israel. We have 2 starting points this week: Gaza and Jerusalem. Split-screen news viewing in Israel and Palestine. On one side, weeks of coalition negotiations intensifying, with either a new government coming or another election, Israel's third in less than a year. On the other, a fresh Israeli military assault on Gaza. Heavy casualties on the Palestinian side, with rockets heading the other way. 2 stories that, when examined, are really one and the same, since the lives lost in Gaza are a central component of the political negotiations in Israel.
The timing of the attacks is a bit curious, considering that Netanyahu is doing his best now to form a government, and at the same time, he's facing potential indictments on various corruption-related scandals. One needs to ask oneself whether or not these things are related. Netanyahu has had a history of initiating or exacerbating violent conflict with Palestinians whenever his legal or political predicaments get a little too sticky.
So this is quite a common practice by Israeli politicians, and especially by Netanyahu, to bomb Gaza, to attack Palestinians, to gain political points with their electorate, which in Israel unfortunately is increasingly right-wing and increasingly violent towards the Palestinians.
Any kind of military assault on the Gaza Strip is seen as a form of strength, is seen as a form of defending the national security of the State of Israel, and therefore the dehumanization of Palestinians has become so effective that this is only seen in one dimension, which is one that gives political capital.
Since 2008, 3 of the wars Israel has waged on Gaza have been launched during Israeli election campaigns. This time around, the votes have already been cast, twice, elections in April and September. But the electoral process is ongoing, since neither Benjamin Netanyahu nor his main rival, Benny Gantz, has been able to patch together a coalition government. And Gantz's efforts to convince Israeli Arab parties to support his would-be coalition gave Netanyahu yet another reason, as if he needed one, to play the national security card.
He was using that conflict to try to delegitimize any option for a minority coalition set by Benny Gantz with the support of the Arab parties within Israel, to incite against those who are 20% of Israel's population, the Palestinian citizens of Israel. He was trying to delegitimize their leaders as supporters of terror.
During this year of elections, Prime Minister Netanyahu's strategy with voters has been to divide, conquer, and if necessary, alarm. In September's vote, his Likud party sent out recorded messages to the mobile phones of the Israeli masses, as it has in past elections, warning them that Arab voters were turning out in droves. But it turned out those messages were actually recorded before the election. Just last weekend, Netanyahu convened what he called an emergency meeting of his party, where he was live-streamed, labeling Palestinian members of the Knesset an existential threat to Israel.
יש אפשרות אמיתית שתוך 48 שעות
תקום ממשלת מיעוט שנתמכת ותלויה בתומכי טרור. אני חושב שהדבר הזה מהווה סכנה אמיתית למדינת ישראל.
As the liberal Israeli paper Haaretz put it, it is hard to exaggerate the gravity of such statements by Netanyahu, inflaming the Jewish community against the Arab community and inciting the entire Israeli public.
Netanyahu is the king of optics, and there is a long history of right-wing politicians and figures inciting against the Arab minority inside Israel. But this is the first time any prime minister told the Israeli people that Palestinian members of Knesset are an existential threat. This kind of rhetoric is extremely dangerous, so much so that even Benny Gantz said that this is a step too far.
But Benny Gantz has also been part of this. His election campaign video used footage from the 2014 Gaza war because he was IDF chief of staff. So he was using it to boast about his manliness, to show that he's tough on Palestinians. It was a particularly horrific war. Thousands of Palestinians killed and injured and maimed. He even said that parts of Gaza were sent back to the Stone Age.
The video that was used by Benny Gantz was particularly infamous. We have a counter in which the number of Palestinians that are killed go up as the campaign video unfolds. And the message is very clear that everyone in Gaza is a terrorist. Everyone in Gaza is someone who deserves to be killed. The video, in a very crude way, makes clear that the only thing that matters in the Gaza Strip, as far as an Israeli politician is concerned, is the number of those killed.
And in fact, the Israeli electorate were receptive to those images. So really what we saw this year in the election campaign round was a competition between two parties boasting about who could do worse things to Palestinians.
And in that competition, the Prime Minister has Israel's most widely read newspaper backing him to the hilt. Israel Hayom is a free paper owned by an American billionaire, a fan of Netanyahu's. Its political coverage is so one-sided, it's commonly known as Bibiton, Bibi's paper. But that wasn't enough for Netanyahu. One of the corruption cases looming over him pertains to his alleged attempts to strong-arm another newspaper, Yediat Aharonot, into supporting him. Some people run for office to become commander-in-chief. Netanyahu acts as though he wants to be Israel's editor-in-chief.
He was trying to change the media landscape, to control it, so this battle over the media is reflected in the media itself. You can see journalists that are, in a very unethical way, loyalists or spokesperson for Netanyahu.
כי ערביי ישראל זה עניין אחד, ומפלגה שבה חלקים נכבדים בתומכי טרור, תומכים בטרוריסטים, התחבקו עם טרוריסטים שיצאו מהכלא, טרוריסטים שרצחו יהודים, זה עניין אחר.
Echoing his messages all over, and he has, of course, his own newspaper. Israel Hayom, for example, would publish something that totally serves Netanyahu. Then this would be immediately posted on Netanyahu's Facebook that has more followers than any other media outlet in Israel, and this works in a circle.
Israel's defenders maintain that for all of its faults, at least it is a true democracy, one surrounded by hostile states with unelected, autocratic rulers. But Palestinians know the flip side of the democracy next door. They have paid the price in bombs, bullets, and lives during Israeli election campaigns in 2008, 2012, and again this year. With no coalition in sight and yet another election likely, Gazans can only hope that the next time Israeli politicians hit the campaign trail, they stick to the talking points and the television debates and leave the army and Palestinians out of it. For a change, a real one.